Welcome to another episode of The World We Live with John Alcock and Jared Freeland. Tonight we're going to be discussing the voting age. Should it be lowered? Ending the wage subsidy in the light of the COVID epidemic. The Rail to Hamilton proposal. Brendan Tarrant and his sentencing. And what's happening with Mike Hosking. So to start with lowering the voting age to 16, I'm going to let Jared give us a bit of background information about that. And then we'll go from there. Jared.
Yeah, hi again, John. Another week, another cold winter's night. So the jackets are on. We're still under level 3 lockdown, hopefully only till Sunday. So yeah, still unprofessional background over at my end. Sorry about that. Hopefully it will not be like this next week. Anyway, lowering the voting age to 16. As I understand it, this was a group of youths who feel very strongly about climate change. They engaged in the climate change protests earlier on. May have even been late last year, back when we were still allowed to go out on protests and things. And they want their voices heard, as they say. They believe that they're politically engaged enough. They're certainly enthusiastic enough, and they should be allowed to vote starting at age 16. What do we feel about that?
I think the question is basically malformed. The question should not be around the arbitrary level of when are you allowed to vote, what age are you allowed to vote, but the question should more accurately be portrayed as, are you contributing to society? Are you paying tax? If you are paying tax, and you are tax positive overall, then why shouldn't you get to have a say in how your money, literally your money, is spent in society in general? Therefore, by that logic, I would say anyone who is paying tax and is tax positive overall should be getting a vote of how their money is being spent. And that's really the only line you need to draw. It's very clear and it's very well defined. And now there are no ifs, but maybes, or exceptions. So that's where I draw the line, not an age, which is arbitrary, at whether you're contributing to society or not.
And that's fair enough. I mean, there are a lot of people even now, when you think about how, when you turn 18, it's basically like flicking a switch. You can vote, you can be drafted, should the need arise, God forbid, and you can legally move out of home, you're no longer dependent on your parents, and a whole lot of others. You still can't enter game areas at Sky City until you're 20, unfortunately.
21.
But the point is that, 21 is it? Okay, 21. But the point is, it is like flicking a switch, it is an arbitrary thing, and I've met people who I felt were mature at 15, 16. I've met people who were 20, 21, hell, even people in their 40s who certainly didn't seem mature in the slightest. I understand that that is perfectly reasonable saying if they're working, but a lot of people now, they're doing menial jobs, perhaps not working full time, certainly not around 16, 17. And I would say perhaps that privilege could be afforded to people who studied some sort of political topics or showed themselves to be engaged with the political process.
So just quickly before we continue, I have just Googled the age of Sky City. You're right, it is in fact 20, not 21, as I said just a moment ago. But in response to your point, why does political engagement give you a right to spend other people's money? That's who's paying tax. And if you're contributing to society, then you should get a say. If you're not contributing to society, as in you are literally benefiting off the generosity of everybody who is, and look guys, that seriously is measured actually in monetary values, in money. That's what money is. It's a value of time. It's not a value of anything else. It's merely a value of medium of exchange by which we exchange time with each other. So I don't care how politically engaged you are or disengaged. If you are contributing in a meaningful way, as in you've contributed more tax then you have received benefits from the government, then you're contributing. You could be 8 years old and I would still give you the vote if you were tax positive.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And there's been quite a bit of support for this. The Green Party are on board. I am a
But
little
they
bit of
also
a
don't
cynic.
contribute to society either. That's the problem. Most of them are unemployed. That's the stereotype, right? Let's stereotype for a second. The Green Party are a bunch of unemployed pot smokers. Okay, but then you don't get to say in how you spend my money. If you are a pot smoker and you're gainfully employed and you contribute overall to the economy and to everybody else, and you're paying into the system for all the services that everybody is using, then you get a vote in how that money is spent. That's it. You bring up a good point of the military. You can be drafted into the military after you're 18. And what that represents is a privilege of being part of society and a duty that comes associated with it. So if you're contributing to society, then you should be able to determine how that's spent. And if you don't want to determine that, that's fine. You have the right to not exercise your right to vote.
Well, that's another issue entirely. And even back, this is, I would say prior to the most thoroughly disliked and thoroughly hated, indeed, candidates in American political history, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, it was that I remember absolute vitriol being heaped upon people who abstained from voting. People saying, your ancestors fought and died for your right to vote. And I could never understand that, because the first time I'd ever voted was in the last election. I've always been interested in politics. The reason I didn't vote was because I didn't trust any of those clowns, any of them.
And that's a vote of no conscience.
And that's a vote of no conscience. And I've always thought the decision to abstain from voting is every bit as legitimate a form of voting, a form of protest, as voting for a political party. I mean, did we hate people who voted for Jono and Ben, the Bill and Ben party, even though it was just a joke? No, that was a good bit of fun. So yeah, very, very much I was absolutely appalled at how a lot of people were treated and coerced and almost made to feel that they were disrespecting their ancestors and democracy itself by choosing not to vote.
A vote of no confidence is literally still a vote. Just because you don't turn up and you choose to be politically disengaged, that's your choice. However, what I would say is, if you vote for a vote of no confidence, or you choose not to vote, then you cannot complain about the outcome afterwards, because that goes hand in hand.
Oh, fair enough. But a lot of people, even when they do vote, they still complain about the outcome afterward.
They do, but they can shut up, because you had the opportunity to vote. You had the opportunity to exert your democratic will, and you chose not to. So it's still a free choice. You're still free. And we should still not ever put things in place that reduce people's freedom to choose. And part of freedom to choose is choosing not to choose. That's straight up it.
When I first heard about, it's actually been mentioned quite a few times over the years. I recall a few other stories like this. But voting at 16, I suspect the Green Party is on board because people who are younger lean more to the left. And this is an inconvenient truth when it comes to people's political views. The boomers, as we know them, are conservative now, but they were progressive when they were the age of the millennials.
Because
they were the
negative.
Anti-war activists, civil rights activists. I'm not going to mention nuclear free because we both know that was a terrible idea. But really,
the reason behind that, why people are left-wing when they're young, is because at that stage, they're tax negative. So it makes sense to vote for policies and procedures and politicians that give them things because they're on the giving end of things. The reason why you become more conservative as you get older is because now you're on the taking side of things and you're trying to protect the things that you've earned over your lifetime. Well, what have we got? Public health, public education. Well, okay, so all kids in the public education system, and in fact, all education in New Zealand, because it's all slightly subsidized, are on the receiving end. So they're getting the benefits of these things. So of course they're going to vote in those favors. But if you could only vote when you were tax positive, then those kids who were working and had full-time jobs for all of their holidays or the rest of it, if that's what their parents made them do, and they ended up being tax positive, I would absolutely guarantee you would find that they wouldn't vote for the left because they would have their hard-earned money, and they know how much work it takes to earn that, taken away from them and given to their school friends who were not working, who are out. They'd see them out having fun, going playing games, going doing whatever with their friends and hanging out, or well, they had to work in the supermarket. That does not make leftists. That makes conservatives. And that solves the problem. And it's not an inconvenient truth. It's just merely the nature of reality.
Well, what I mean by the inconvenient truth is that the way I see it, as people have more life experience, develop maturity, they tend to lean more to the right because it takes life experience and maturity to realize that it's not all beer, pizza, rainbows, unicorns, and all the other good things. You do have to work. You are responsible for your own life, your own decisions, and it's only just and fair that way. And
you only learn that when you start contributing to society more than you are receiving from society. And I'm not saying... Yep.
Do you think that it's time to perhaps overhaul the voting system as we know it? So we talk about tax positive people. Do you think taking votes away from people on the benefit would be appropriate?
That tax negative. They're literally the definition of tax negative, and not even all of them. So if you've been tax positive for 30 years of your life, and then you're on the benefit for 6 months, you're still tax positive. So you can still vote. But if you have done no work ever in your entire life, and you're on one of those families that is minority, but still they exist, on the 3 generations of welfare, and you've never worked ever in your entire life, and you've been on welfare the entire time, you are tax negative. So you don't get to have a vote to vote for more stuff for yourself, because that's exactly what happens. And I don't really blame these people either. They have no choice other than to vote for more stuff for themselves because they don't know any other way of life. They've made it their way of life. But why should they get to spend the productive people's society, part of society's funds, on voting more things away from them to themselves? People say it is a very communist, socialist, we've got to help and be socialist. It's selfish. It's 100% purely selfish. They are voting to take other people's stuff at gunpoint and give it to them. That is the definition of selfish behavior.
And we can really go into the failings of the welfare state and how the welfare state does not help people, does not help development.
That's a topic for a different day. Like, I wouldn't even change the welfare system at the moment at all. You can do what I'm suggesting without touching the welfare system. But what you would do is record how negative or how positive people are. Because when you're born, you start at 0. You start at 0 because you can't otherwise. And then from then on, any transfers that you get from the government just get recorded against your Social Security number or whatever it is that we plan to use in New Zealand, how they track it, your WINS number or whatever it is. Okay. So when you become tax positive, then you can participate in the elections. Before then, you're getting the stuff that you're getting. You're living and reaping the benefits of other people's work in society. So you need to repay your debt to society. And you could extend it to further than that. You could extend it to free education if you really wanted to. You could say, well, just let people get educated and have tertiary education, primary, secondary, tertiary, do all the university courses that you want. But you don't get to vote until you have now paid that amount back, which does two things. One, it makes people responsible for their actions and incorporate the costs of their actions into their own life, which is what I keep saying, is incorporating the negative externalities of your actions. And two, because they have to pay it back, and not with any interest or anything like that, they just have to become tax positive. It means that there is now new money there. Well, there is the same money there for the next person that comes after them. So it's a long-term stable position that is self-perpetuating as well. And it doesn't require the removal of any of the social programs that we have at the moment. You could, in theory, have them all if the voters who are tax positive voted in favor of doing that.
So how do you bat away, starting with the Green Party and their tribes / supporters, all those people who will say that voting is a basic human right, and how dare John Alcock try and take that away, even if they haven't contributed to society in any meaningful way before?
Because a basic human right is anything that you can have if you are alone in the woods by yourself. What's a vote going to do there? Can you vote? Well, I vote to go and do a thing, okay? But that's just you exercising your will. So the answer is no, it's not. Voting is not a basic human right. Voting is a privilege. And saying that voting is a basic human right is really downplaying all the actions of all the people over all the course of history that have had literally to fight for the right to have a vote. It used to be only the super powerful, rich and wealthy landowners. And then it became any landowners. And then it became just men who served in the military and the draft. And then it became women who didn't really have those kind of responsibilities because they're still not conscripted into the draft in most countries. So it's not a human right because you wouldn't have that if you were by yourself. Things that are human rights are things that you would have that are completely inalienable from you in any way. The right to freedom of speech. If I stand in the woods by myself, I can still speak. The right to bear the fruits of my labor and the costs of my decision is a human right and a human responsibility. If I was in the woods by myself, then I could build a house or I could go fishing and I could enjoy the fruits of my labor. The right to freedom of association. If I came across other people in the woods, I could choose to associate with them and trade with them or not. Those are human rights. And we've got this bullshit Marxism that is coming along and trying to convince us that everything is a human right. But it's really just things that they want to have, that they don't have, that they're jealous of other people having. It's like, I have the right to clean water. Well, no, you don't. If you're in the woods, you don't have the right to clean water. Animals and things piss and shit in the water all the time. Is it clean? No. Do you have to clean it yourself? Yes. So you've now inserted your labor into cleaning the water to make it clean for you. Well, what if I came along and stole your water? Well, I have a right to clean water, so I'm just going to take the water that Jared has cleaned. Well, that's not a right. It's just not.
Oh, that's absolutely correct. And I do need to throw in one little known, or is it radically suppressed piece of history, is that the vast majority of women opposed getting the vote because they didn't want to have to go to war.
They didn't want to be included in the draft.
Eventually, they got the vote without any of the responsibilities. So good on you, girls. Good on you, Kate Sheppard. You know what? Kate Sheppard was a prohibitionist.
Do you know what's even better? Is under my system, I don't care about your race, sexuality, or any other immutable characteristics. I don't care. None of that is relevant. The only thing that is relevant is something that everybody has and that everybody can do, and that is contribute. You can contribute in some way. It doesn't matter what way it is, as long as you're doing something that somebody else finds valuable and you can trade with them and contribute somehow, and the government's taking a percentage of income tax. I don't even mind what that percentage is either. That's not important. But what is important is that you are contributing in some way. If you're not, you are there receiving the benefits of other people's generously given labor. That's what you're receiving. And you should be damn grateful that people are able to work and are able to do these kind of things and are able and philanthropic enough to believe in a system that provides some kind of level of social safety net for exactly people like you in this situation. Most people are not bastards. Most people will help you out. What is the quote that I heard the other day? I had a really good quote. In fact, I posted it in a Joe Rogan podcast to my Facebook page. And you should go and watch it. It's by an Indian guy called Naval, and he's actually quoting somebody else. In the New Zealand context, it basically goes like this. At a family level, I'm a communist. At a friends level, I'm a socialist. At a electorate level, I'm a Republican. And at a state level, a country level, I'm a libertarian. And the reason why you must do it that way, is because at a countrywide level, you can't trust everybody. And the reason why you can't trust everybody is because cheaters and freeloaders exist. So how do you deal with them? Well, in a communist society, you have the commissars. And they go around and enforce it and make sure people do all the work and make sure that people contribute to society. Communism is better for socialism than socialism for exactly that reason, because at least under communism, everybody has to work. But now you have to waste an enormous amount of resources policing people. But under capitalism, you don't have to, because those people go away. They can't survive because cheaters are naturally bred out of the system. No one wants to associate with cheaters. No one wants to associate with freeloaders. So those people are naturally removed from the system anyway. So you've just saved yourself a bunch of bureaucracy to end up in exactly the same position where the majority of your population is actively contributing to society. It just logically solves all of the problems. And if you want to help out the poor or the differently abled or the diminished or some kind of marginalized group, I don't really care what it is, you should be free to be able to A, do that yourself philanthropically, which is the best way of doing it, or B, vote for social programs that help those kind of things out. If you believe in public education and you are tax positive, vote for public education. You have the vote. But if you believe in public education and you are tax negative, as in you haven't contributed a single damn cent to the entire country, why do you get a say in how my money is spent? Why do you get to say in how anyone else's money is spent? You don't contribute. So you're just getting public education that you want for yourself at the expense of everybody else's time. And that is the one thing that we are all short of, is time. Because it's the only quantity that is actually really scarcely limited.
So, in terms of welfare, it has been expanded quite substantially lately. The wage subsidy scheme is due to expire very soon, and there have been calls pretty much throughout Parliament by ACT, National and the Greens that the government should extend it. What do we think about that?
This comes back to the point that I make quite often, is those that cause the damage should pay to compensate. And since the government is causing the current lockdown for what is an insignificant number of deaths compared to the number of deaths that are caused by, I don't know, car crashes, the flu, common cold, pretty much everything else, they are responsible for the damages. And to turn around and do what Grant Robertson said, and said, you've had enough. We've been supporting you for ages. Well, what a massive prick. You unbelievable tight-ass bastard. You are forcing these businesses to be incapable of operating, and then you're saying, oh, and we're not going to help you out at all. Well, if you're a business owner or if you're an employee of a hospitality business and you vote for Labour, I will laugh at you when you finally realize that you are already unemployed and you are now 100% reliant on government handouts. And when they go away, I'm going to think it's really funny.
Well, it's certainly, for the the state of things suggests that when these subsidies go, then the real damage is going to hit. I've seen estimates of 15 to 20% of hospitality jobs are going to be gone, and in a lot of ways, this subsidy does appear to merely be prolonging the inevitable.
It is. It is literally prolonging the inevitable. And it's costing us what, $500 million a week? What, 10% of Auckland businesses are currently saying that they're going to shut their doors and go out of business. All those jobs are gone. I have friends in hospitality that are applying for the military and the New Zealand police because there's no hospitality jobs. And they're not coming back because people are not going to be going out again. And this continuous climate of fear is going to stop people going out again. And we're probably going to have continuous rolling lockdowns forever, because that's the whole Marxist plot, is to lock us in their houses forever, which they're literally doing right now. We are under house arrest. It cannot be any more obvious than this.
I don't think they'll get away with another lockdown. Even if there's a massive outbreak, I think that that next time, I mean, you look at level 3 now. So level 4, we all sort of were on board. Well, maybe we weren't on board, but we certainly acted like it. We went back down to level 3, and there was still massive restrictions on everything you could think of. Still, I didn't see very much dissent. A lot of people were playing by the rules. This time, at level 3, we've had masses of people trying to escape Auckland City and having to be turned back at the checkpoints. I drove down to Mission Bay a couple of weeks ago, and everyone just looked like a normal day. People were swimming, people were gathering in large groups, and already, it's been in the media a little bit, but the cracks have appeared. People aren't tolerating this sort of thing anymore, and I don't think they'll get away with it well, this would be a third time. It's too much. If there's another outbreak, they're just going to have to let it be, because
it won't be over COVID. It won't be over COVID. The alert levels are in place. This is how this always goes. We've seen this time and time and again, repeatedly over history. It's been written about in books. It's been made into film adaptations all the time. What they do is they find a crisis, they make up an alert level system, they lock everybody away, then they sort of reduce the alert level system, so it will go down from 3 to 2 to 1, and then something else will come along. And they go, oh, we have to go back up again to level 2, level 3, we have to go back up again. Everything's terrible, the world's on fire, we're all going to kill everybody. There's 22 people dead. Let's be serious. More people died from car accidents and the flu last year. And more people will die from the flu again this year. So maybe the flu is going to be the next thing. So next year, 2020, after COVID's gone away, oh, but we're having a flu pandemic now, and there's hundreds of people dying. Yeah, that happens every year. I mean, people die every day. People die every day. Death is a natural part of a human life. We're all going to die. I'm going to die. You're going to die. Everybody's going to die. So what happens is they make you panic about this stuff. They make the problem seem a lot worse than it is. Go and look at the stats of people who died. Yeah, there was a big initial spike at the beginning. So was the flu when it first came out. That's what happened. But then over time, as we learn to deal with the fact that we are literally surrounded by viruses and bacteria and things that want to kill us off every single second of every single day, because that's literally the truth, and we're a tiny little meat sack wandering around a big ball of rock traveling through the universe at thousands of miles a second in a galaxy that's about to collide with Andromeda galaxy in a few billion years, what the hell are we doing? It's just panic for control purposes. And this is how the Marxists implement control purposes. You do the alert levels, you push it down, you find the next crisis, you push it back up again. So maybe they won't survive doing another COVID lockdown, but I absolutely 100% guarantee that if they get elected in our next set of elections, there will be another crisis of some kind. And I can almost predict what it will be too. It will be when Donald Trump gets elected in the US and goes to war with the Marxists. And that will be the World War III, and that will raise the alert level, and that will cause the problems, and then they'll all blame Trump again, as they always bloody do, for dealing with the problem, which is Marxism. Marxism is the problem. It is a fundamentally flawed ideology that only results in the bullshit outcomes that we see exactly happening right now. I'm doom and gloom, but I think it's kind of funny in a weird sort of way.
Well, certainly there's no shortage of manufactured crises. Plenty. The media is forever hyping up anything you could think of. Epidemics of diseases, epidemics of bullying, epidemics of harassment in the workplace, anything. And where I get hazed up, I don't think that we are going to have what basically amounts to martial law declared for very inconsequential reasons, because governments don't survive that. They keep being the boy who cried wolf. This latest lockdown could be the end of the Labour Party come the next election.
Well,
this coming election.
Man, tell that to the deep blue states in the US. They're the ones with the riots. They've been Democrat for 50 years. Some of them 60 years. I mean, they keep voting Democrats because it's really easy to control all the sheep. If you tell them that just outside that fence over there, the big one that we put up to protect you, there's lots of wolves out there. And they're just waiting for you to drop the barrier down a little bit, and then they'll just jump over the fence. And then some of you might die while you've got people dying, or sheep dying of old age and common illnesses. They're dying right next to you. There's people dying all around you right now. But it's what they can tell you to look over there. But there's big bad things just there. They're just there. They're just there. And I end up sounding like this weird conspiracy nut.
It's false consciousness. It's Marxist theory.
Marxist theory.
It's not alcohol, by the way, I promise.
Neither's mine, surprisingly.
Yeah, it was recommended we don't drink because it's unprofessional, but goodness, sometimes that's all I feel like doing.
I'm not even drinking coffee. This is hot water and milk. God.
Well, it is winter.
It's not even that hot anymore.
I've got a soft topic. Believe it or not.
That's probably good. Let's move to a soft topic so I don't get myself too worked up about the bloody Marxists again.
Okay. Very good.
It's all got a common cause. It's a common cause. It runs through everything.
Well, first, some good news. Brenton Tarrant, the crazed, well, I don't know. I don't want to call him a madman. I don't want to call him a psycho. And the reason is, if you call somebody a psycho and you say they're mentally ill, it in a way absolves them of responsibility for what they've done, because it implies that it wasn't Brenton Tarrant, it was Brenton Tarrant's crazy state of mind. I don't think he's a psycho. He's certainly a madman. He certainly had some mad ideas. And today he was sentenced, first time it's ever happened in New Zealand, to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. In a way, I want to rejoice. Justice is served. But, let's talk about this next week. That was meant to be a bit of good news. So, yeah, for now, let's just rejoice in the fact that that bastard, that madman, will never see the light of day again. And hopefully a few of the big bad inmates at Parema Remo Men's Prison will maybe pass a few bribes around and take him out.
Oh, I was going to say teach him a lesson like we see in the movies. There are things worse than death. But also, in this case, if you're going to put somebody in prison, for literally their entire life where they can never get out. Why are we wasting the $6 or $7 million on doing this? Like that's a really easy to solve problem. Like he's never coming out. He's unrehabilitatable. Like he can never leave no matter how much rehabilitation he has. I can think of a hell of a lot of better things to spend $7 million on. What are we doing? What are we doing? Get rid of him. Be done with it. Move on.
Well, if there was ever a more appropriate time in New Zealand's history to use the death penalty, unfortunately, we got rid of that back in the 60s.
Unfortunately.
You know, he wrote about this. Tarrant wrote about this. He was happy if he was arrested for what he was about to do. He was happy to be a burden on the state's resources till the end of his days. So,
$7 million
in a way,
on helping poor people.
they gave him what he wanted.
They gave him exactly what he wanted. They gave him the media coverage he wanted. They gave him the trial he wanted. They gave him the prison sentence he wanted.
$3 million the taxpayers have paid so far for his legal fees.
So $10 million we're spending on some guy that brutally murdered a bunch of New Zealanders in Christchurch and admitted to it and then didn't contest the sentence and then pleaded guilty. And then we're doing exactly what he wants. Why? Why are we spending this money on these people? It just doesn't make any sense.
I hate to admit it, but he played us for all that we were worth. He knew this would happen, and he used it to his advantage.
I agree. We should move into this topic next week, but I will agree with you. At very least in this case, we can say that justice has legitimately been served under the confines of New Zealand law. He was caught, he was tried, there was no summary executions by police or any of that other stuff, and justice is literally being served in this case as far as New Zealand legislation allows. That's justice, guys. That's justice.
So now let's build some train tracks out to Hamilton.
This topic's a little bit more funny. So I was scrolling through Facebook just the other day, and apparently there's a $14.4 billion plan to build a high-speed rail link between Auckland and Hamilton. And
God, you could almost buy a bullet train spending that much on it, couldn't you?
$14.4 billion. You're talking about funding Farm Act to buy more drugs for people, but we're going to piss money down in the drain on this. I can drive, as per the Google Maps that I showed, in the middle of the day, just the other day, when I saw this article and posted beneath it, from the center of Auckland Central to the center of Wellington in an hour 28. And the train is going to take nearly 2 hours. What? Seriously? At the least, it'll take 70 minutes. Okay, well, why don't you build a $14.4 billion road and let me do 200 or unlimited speeds on it? Then I'll be in Hamilton from Auckland in 20 minutes. And I'll still have my car, and I can vape in my car, and I can take luggage with me, and I can drive around when I'm there, and it's more comfortable, and I can have my own music, and I can have the window down and the aircon at whatever temperature I want. What are we... It is bloody hilarious that we keep pushing public transport when it provably is worse than cars. Cars are better. Spend the money there.
Of course, public transport is worse than cars as the human experience, the operator's experience. But I think what they're aiming for, they want more environmentally friendly options. And they're wrong, by the way, and I'll get into that. But really, they're trying to take cars out of the picture. They're trying to have more people, it's more efficient when you have more people on public transport. And they also, and this is really what happens when you fill Auckland Transport and the cabinets with people who they may not hate man's use of the automobile, but they certainly don't understand how important being able to drive cars is to an enormous number of people. I mean, in Auckland, you think about the geography of Auckland in terms of square area, including all the jurisdiction of the super city, it is the largest city in the world, the largest major city in the world in terms of area. We've built it around volcanoes, mountain ranges, massive swaths of disparate kinds of terrain. So you need to drive cars to access a lot of places. You know, you can't just build train tracks all over the place. And look, I mean, it's the future of work, and COVID is going to accelerate it. People will be working multiple jobs in different areas. They will have to commute very rapidly to a lot of appointments, to a lot of different sites. And look, I'm a property manager. I can't take the bus to appointments. I have to take a car. Tradesmen are the same, consultants are the same, real estate, anything you can think of. And the problem is public transport works.
You know I'm going to bring this back to Marxism again, though, right? I mean...
Oh, yes, John. I know you're going to bring it back to Marxism.
Where there's a will, there's a way. And so it works really well if you've got a population that lives in one designated area and works in another. And then you move the population from one area to another. And they do exactly what they're told, and they go exactly where they're staying, and they stay there for 8 hours a day. And then they go home again. Cars are freedom, man. Cars are freedom. We are both car people, you more than me. But cars are freedom. They give you the freedom to choose where you want to go, when you want to do it, how you want to do it. Cars are freedom. And Marx
and that's why I guess it began in America, and the massive car culture and uptake of the automobile and influence that it had in America built the suburbs and people living outside of the centers of cities, and it's a car's appeal to humans is mainly due to the sense of freedom it gives us and the utility, and you're not going to snuff that out by trying to make it very difficult for people to drive cars around. I went for a walk down Queen Street a few weeks ago, first time I'd been there in several years, and I wished I hadn't. I could barely find a park. And basically what New Zealand really needs, and we should have really done it back in the 60s when we built the state highway system. They don't exist in the Southern Hemisphere, but something like the interstate highway network that the Americans have. You know, these massive freeways of 4 to 8 lanes in either direction that have no traffic lights, no intersections or anything like that. You can get on it, drive directly one end of the country to the other, and there's actually a very good book that I'm starting to read called Divided Highways, and it's about the interstate highway system, and it basically argues that the massive growth that America experienced in the 20th century, in the latter half of the 20th century, a lot of it is down to that interstate highway system they built and how easily they could move men and material around the country.
Of course,
would work for New Zealand.
Of course it is. Why? Because it facilitates trade. That's why it works. That's why it worked in World War II Germany. That's why it worked for the Romans. What did the Romans do? What are they most famous for doing? Building roads. Why? Because it facilitates trade. It was primarily for the military to get there in the first place, but then the merchants used them after the military was gone, and it facilitates trade. It facilitated the biggest ancient empire that we're aware of. It allowed World War II Germany to build up sufficient resources to take on the rest of the world. That's what roads do. Governments should be involved with facilitating trade. if you want to read about Shane Jones, are you listening to this, Shane Jones? Because you should be. If you want to have growth in the regions, stop propping up failing businesses and start building roads so that people can be transported on the roads quickly and easily to those areas and also escape from them as well. Then what you use the rail for is transporting freight. Use rail to transport freight between city centers, use roads to transport people between city centers, and use ships and planes to transport things between countries. Appropriate fuel, appropriate application, appropriate infrastructure. That's what you should be spending this money on, Shane Jones. You're listening to me? Go and do it. Stop wasting my money and my time.
I wouldn't worry too much about Shane Jones. They're not going to be in Parliament in a few weeks' time anyway. But
don't say that, man, because it'll happen.
Prioritizing public transport is misguided. The reason it's misguided is because they're not thinking 10, 20, 30, 50 years ahead. Private vehicle ownership eventually will become a thing of the past. Cars will be shared, just like Uber or Lyft or something like that. And what happens then is that we will need better road systems because there'll be so many more of them. When we have self-driving cars, they can line up bumper to bumper. They'll be far more efficient than any bus, than any train. They can, be separated by less than a meter distance between them because they won't crash. And really, we're going to need roads.
Yep.
They'll do it better than trains. They already do.
And hey guys, trucks go on roads and electric cars go on roads. I mean, can somebody just please tap Elon Musk and say, hey buddy, just come over here. Just build us a whole fleet of electric cars in New Zealand. We'll put some nuclear power stations in so all the electricity is clean and green. We won't destroy the world with wind solar power farms that literally toxify everything and only last 10 years, and then you have to throw them away. We won't have wind turbines that kill all our native bird life as they fly through them and get exploded by blades spinning around at high speed. What are we doing? If you want to power everything by electricity, cool. Down with that. But you got to do it in a way that's not completely retarded.
Exactly. Do things in ways that aren't completely retarded. That could almost be written, what's the speaker's name in Parliament?
Trevor Mallard.
Trevor Mallard.
I don't think if you tattooed that on his forehead, he'd remember that one. It's not even.
Yeah, have it on a big placard behind him.
It's about being logical. There are some applications for which fossil fuels, being very energy-dense materials, are incredibly good. Planes. Weight is important in planes. You're not going to be able to have battery-powered planes. You just can't get the energy density. Physics disallows that. So you've got to find some other way to do it. Rockets into space, until we spend a space elevator, they have to be powered by chemical and solid rocket boosters. It's the only way we can get enough power to launch things into space. Right, okay. But where can we use electricity? For heating our homes, for running our vehicles. Tesla has proved that. We can run our vehicles on those. Tesla. I quite like them, actually. If I had $200,000, I'd buy one, but I don't. We can use the appropriate fuel for the appropriate application, which means you use the efficient amount of that fuel for the efficient amount of that application. And if you do that, and you actually follow a bit of logical patterns, instead of blindly going down ideological paths informed by Marxist theory, which is provably untrue, you're going to come to better conclusions. And that's why libertarianism is the only way to go forward, because it naturally involves evolution. It allows freedom of discussion. It allows people to disagree. It allows people to go out and prove that something is better than others. It's the scientific method. It's how we've come from thinking that the Earth was the center of the universe to knowing that the universe is 14.8 billion years old and seeing galaxies and nebulas and things that are far away and amazing discoveries that were made about human health, biology, physics, math, and chemistry. Without that logic rationale sitting behind all of these things, you are doomed to religiosity, and that is doomed to failure because it blindly believes things in the face of the evidence.
I told you I could bring it back to Marxism. That's what I bloody do.
Certainly.
Well,
Well, spoiler alert, Shane Jones didn't hear you. He's too busy telling the CEO of Air New Zealand he ought to resign because he's not flying to Ruatoria anymore.
oh,
Where
shit.
was it? Yeah.
Come and see me, mate. We'll have a beer. I'll buy you a beer. I'll buy you a beer, Shane. Come and have a beer. Well, I'll show you how to sort all of these problems out. Yeah, me and my bloody infinite solution. It's not that I have the answer to everything. It's that I'm well aware of how to think about things in a logically constructive manner. And, as I always say, if you have a way to prove me wrong, I want to know about it. Because that helps me update my model of predictive reality. And the better I can predict things, the better off I am, the better off you are, because I will share that model with you.
So to help John critique his own version of reality, don't forget to like and subscribe.
That would be great. And we've, you've let me waffle on for near on 50 minutes now. I actually put a timer down here just to record that because I tend to waffle quite a lot, as you may have noticed.
That was just a wealth of tangents, wealth of subjects. And so next week, let's talk about Brenton Tarrant in a bit more detail. And hopefully we can find a few more softer topics to balance it out. So my blood won't boil too much.
I give you all a challenge. Find me a topic that I can't relate to Marxism.
Well, I'm stumped.
There's got to be one out there somewhere.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you for watching, everybody. Please, by all means, leave your feedback. And if you have any suggestions as to what we could do better, and yeah, please let us know that it's appropriate to drink alcohol here because, like I said, sometimes it'll make things a hell of a lot easier.
It depends. Do you like more angry, ranty John, or more sort of relaxed, kind of, you can go with the flow a little bit more, John? I don't know. We're just trying a few things out. Let us know what you think.
Still a prototype.
Yeah.
See you next week.
See you guys.